We are rolling on December 5th, 2017. Get your hands out of your pockets, sir. Where we're hearing our impromptu final speeches. And we're entertaining. This is the fourth incarnation. Fourth incarnation of our impromptu speeches. And we're about to hear from Armand Sagart. And Armand was given 3 topics, which we boringly heard about from Candace. So we're not going to bother with Jane Austen or Maya Angelou. We're going to talk about number 2. Okay? And number 2 reads, virtue can only flourish among equals. And that's from Mary Wollstonecraft. Mary Wollstonecraft. Observe virtue can only flourish among equals. Sir, let's see you knock that out of the baseball park.
Hi, my name's Armand.
Hi, Armand.
So virtue can only flourish among equals. Conversely, if you're unequal, virtue cannot flourish. This is the light that I chose to look at this question. In today's society, especially under President Trump's administration, we've seen big polarization between the American people. There's inequality everywhere, more so than there has been in the last decade, with things like Islamophobia, racial bias, and ever-increasing income gap. So today I want to ask the question, I want to ask the question, among unequals, can virtue flourish? And my answer is no, and here's why. Number 1, racial bias in America has crippled morality to an extent in America. Secondly, the spike in Islamophobia has divided more people where virtue can't be found in that area. And third, the wealth gap has increased more and more every year to the point where the rich continuously take opportunities from the poor. And this is significant because if we can figure out why virtue doesn't exist, and if it is an inequality, then we know the exact causation. We can do something about the situation that we're all in together. So my first reason is racial bias in America has spiked. According to a report by the FBI in 2015, out of 5,800 single bias incidents, around 60% of them were racially charged. That's up from 5% from last year. So we do see an increase in racial bias, events in America. There's plenty of stories from people who feel marginalized and discriminated in our America, in our society, and they feel like there's a lack of virtue. My second reason is that there's a higher spike in Islamophobia since the election. Basically, 512 days after Trump, there was a study done, and there has been a 57% increase in Islamic-related attacks in the past year and a half. And so that just shows, the massive gap in inequality, and there's no virtue that can be found there as well. And lastly, the wealth gap has increased substantially since President Trump's America. According to CQ researcher, the top 10%'s income has increased by 47%, while the lower class has increased only 28%. So the wealth gap keeps increasing over and over again as the years have gone on, and that has caused the poor to be at a disadvantage. And so, in summary, I've shown you three reasons why, amongst inequality, virtue cannot exist. 1, there's a spike in racial bias in America that's led to non-virtuous events. Islamophobia has risen since President Trump has been in power. And finally, the wealth gap has been wider than ever before. So I hope there's no doubt in your mind that inequality causes virtue. And although that this is sad and that happens with inequality and virtue, we also can recognize that it's happening, and if we can identify it, we can have a brighter future after all of this. Thank you.
What was the time?
3:40.
What?
3:40.
3:40. Mm-hmm. What did you like?
Do you want me to stand up and stuff still?
I do, yeah. It's good to stand up in a speech class. You get used to being on your feet and speaking out.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Good stuff.
Good
Hi, I'm
stuff.
Kelsey.
Hi, Kelsey.
Hi, Kelsey. Kelsey Grammer.
Yeah. I thought you did a really good job, presenting it. You were calm. You remembered all your points. You didn't have to use cards or anything like that. So I thought that was good.
Mm-hmm. How can he improve? Let's hear, I guess, okay, you don't want to comment. How can he improve, Mr.
Hi,
Daniel
guys. My name is...
Sidekick?
I'm not going to go Hi, guys. My name is Leo.
Hi, Leo.
Hi, Leo.
So, I thought your speech was good. However, I feel like you could use kind of more storytelling techniques to kind of, make your speech more concrete. I was able to understand your main points, but I feel like stories would really make the speech more memorable and understandable.
Thanks.
Well, let me try to salvage some positive comments to you before I give you some helpful suggestions for your conceptual analysis. Boy. I didn't speak with notes. So, that's to your benefit. That was good. Your quote from, our famous Mary Wollstonecraft said, "Virtue can only flourish among equals." Among equals. So, what we didn't get or needed to have very early on from you, Mr. Armin Sagard, is let's start with what is virtue?
You guys, isn't it just like morality?
No, it's not. So, when you see a question like this, I would have looked into Mary and her background and found out who she was and what kind of philosophy she espouses. And I would have gone and looked at virtue. I looked at some of the writings of Aristotle and Plato, and as they talk about virtue. Okay? But, you give President Trump a lot of power and credit for having only been in office a year. And I think you massively overclaim his influence and his effect. And I'm going to show you where and how and why. Okay? So, you assert that under President Trump we've seen a record spike in hate crimes. There's no documentation to that. Where is that from? The Uniform Crime Report. We don't get any evidence of that. Yeah.
By the FBI.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, down below, but not there. So you just asserted it up top. And you said the modern economy has created a big divide between people and their lives. Okay, the modern economy. That's not President Trump. That's just Clinton and mostly President Obama. Most of this stuff occurred, right? So, it's fashionable on this campus to bash President Trump, but we should do it when there's real evidence to do so. Mm-hmm. So, you said that there's more racial bias, there's more Islamic phobia, and President Trump has caused the wealth gap to increase against the poor. And how he did that, I don't know. And you don't tell us. Okay? You said this is significant because we need to be aware of how inequality is hampering virtue. And more to the point of why virtue, more to the point of a philosophical question of you can only have virtue among equals, may or may not be true, right? Are you only saying that you have to have equal income to have virtue among people?
I'm just saying there should be a sense of equality. And that's just one aspect that I decided to touch upon.
Okay. On your main body, you said racial bias in America causes morality to cripple. I don't know what that means. I don't know how that relates to virtue. You tell us the FBI, some mystic report from the FBI. I guess it's this hate crime statistics in 2016, right? Is that the quote you're using? There was 5,800 single bias incidents, and 59% of them were motivated by race or ethnicity, and this was up 59% from a decade ago, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, this is 2015. When did President Trump take office?
16.
Yeah. Okay. Second thing you talked about was Islamic phobia. Mm-hmm. And I suppose, that there's something to be said for President Trump has articulated a concern about the ideology of the religion of Islam, right? And he believes we should confront the ideology as well as the people, and we shouldn't have such a liberal policy of admitting these people into America. He was elected on that platform, and people voted for him to do that, and he's done that.
I mean, yeah, that's true. I think the report, though, was specifically about, after the election. So I agree that the first point was, not as solid, but I think that the second point was directly about the effect of Trump.
Okay, yes, that was linked to Trump, but I don't know about virtue. So, on the wealth gap, takes opportunity from the poor. Mm-hmm. You talked about the wealth gap increased from 1970 by 28%, and decline the upper middle class. How happened during Clinton and during Obama?
I think I mentioned Trump in the intro, but in my thesis, I'm not really focusing on Trump. I'm just kind of talking. So I wasn't intending to link Trump and that together. Okay,
well, you did it initially, and the wealth gap has just been going on and on. And what I didn't get is a link of why we can't have virtue I don't believe that people that are poor can't have virtue, which you seem to be implying. Or more to the point that you have to be equal in order to have virtue among people.
I guess I was saying that I thought I Googled it and I saw that virtue, and I'll recheck that, but virtue is morality, and I was saying this sense of inequality gives a sense of unvirtuousness, but I directly say that like there is, someone who's less well off has no virtue. I just meant like the general sense of inequality gives a general sense of like a lack of morality in the system.
Okay. And finally, your tieback, you wrote, Trump's America has polarized our nation.
President Trump. I wrote it in because I didn't put it in this moment.
Has polarized our nation. Mm-hmm. And that's a claim that I also would challenge. Our nation was polarized, and President Trump was just responding to it. Now, he may have exacerbated and increased it a little bit, but we had a very polarized nation. So what I'm getting at is what I didn't like or see, Mr. Armin Sigart, was I didn't see a clear definition of virtue. I didn't see a clear definition of the delineation between why people have to be equal for virtue to flourish. I didn't see where it doesn't flourish or where it does flourish. So that's my feedback to your speech. Thank you. Okay. And thank you for agreeing to do this afterwards. I hope I didn't make you too late for your 4:30 appointment.
Thank you. 4:30.
Take care, dude.
Take care. Okay.
Take have a nice winter break.
Does someone else have to be the next one to go?
Yeah, I'll go.
Oh, you'll go.
I have to leave
Okay.
at 5.
You have to leave.
I'm not in any rush, so
Oh, praise the Lord.
hang
Excellent.
out as long as you need me.
Okay, well, I
They're all
like
in
that.
order.
Cool, thank you. They're all in order. Leonard Yang. Okay, Mr. Leonard Yang. Let me try to find you. Are you on here, Leonard, or are you one of these phony balonies that didn't
Oh,
sign
no,
up
I'm
either?
on there. I should be in the quotes. I believe speakers.
I like your Christmas tree.
Do I like my Christmas tree?
Yeah, it has, green,
Oh.
blue, and red.
My Christmas shirt, yeah. Well, there's a Christmas tree shortage,
Did you decorate your house this
No, not yet. We went to the Home Depot, and they told us there's a shortage.
I saw that on the news.
Yeah.
Do you usually pay someone to do the lights at your house, or do you
Oh, no.
do it yourself?
Oh, no.
Because I do it myself.
Good for you. We do the laser show.
Oh,
Nice.
so
We are.
the cheap way out, huh?
I'm going to go to your house.
We have a big acre hill behind our house, so we shoot a laser up that. Shoot the
Wow.
second laser on the hill and on the house. And
Nice.
it's cool and it's simple. And,
I have a
you know.
video of my decorations. Do you want to
Oh
see?
yeah, I want to see them. Yeah. Is this in Rockford or
Newport.
Palatial Mansion?
Palatial Mansion.
Newport Beach.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah, it's not.
Hold on, it's loading.
Huh? Oh, no, I'm gonna go over there. I just want to, keep...
No, it's very nice.
For the,
Oh, you know what was on last night on
I actually put a
HBO?
tree outside too.
Oh, that's
You'll
pretty.
see it in a second.
Okay, we'll look at this later. This is not right for these people. The House of Sand and Fog was on last night on HBO.
You saw the
I couldn't watch it. It just depresses the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Mr. Yan. Leonard Yan. Oh boy. Yeah. You did 2 pages. I'm impressed by that. That's good. Yeah.
I think the second outline is 1 page.
Okay.
Are they supposed to be 1 page?
What?
Are they supposed to be 1 page?
No. Some people did extensive research, looked into who the author was and their philosophical background and stuff. Others just...
Yeah, I'm sort of like winging
Yeah.
a lot of it.
Okay. Okay, Leonard, this is an easy one for me because I'm kind of, it's just an easy one for me. So, Leonard, is that your name, Leonard, or do you go by Leo?
Leo, Leonard, whatever. Leonard's
don't-
gonna be like the name that I'm gonna use like once I get out of school.
Just don't call me late for dinner, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah. Okay, Leo. I like all the quotes, really, but the one that I like in particular is number 1 by Nelson Mandela, that great South African civil rights leader
Yeah, I'm gonna talk
who
about
was
that.
incarcerated for many years, which of course you're going to give us a wonderful historical background on, of course. But Nelson Mandela wrote, "The greatest glory in living lies not in never failing, but in rising every time we fall." The greatest glory in living lies not in never failing, but in rising every time we fall. Do I have a time off?
Yeah.
Okay,
Just
sir.
let me know when I hit 4 minutes.
Okay, and we be ready, sir.
When I think of this quote, I think about Batman. Batman is one of the biggest superheroes of our generation, and the 3 Christian Bale movies can prove that to extent. Batman lives this quote. Batman knows that the glory lies not in never falling, but in rising every time he falls. Batman's been shot by an RPG, he's been mauled by dogs, and he even had Bane break his back over his knee. But he came back. Every single time where he falls, he rises. This brings me to the quote that I'm going to be speaking about today. The greatest glory lives not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. Nelson Mandela said this, and no one probably knows better about falling than Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was a anti-apartheid revolutionary in South Africa, and he was even jailed. But he didn't let that fall stop him. He rose, and he rose to even become the president of South Africa. Today, I'm going to give you 2 examples of how we don't find glory in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. And those examples are going to come from Doodle Jump and Jay-Z. Alright, so we all play video games, whether it's on our phones or on our Xboxes or computers. And the one thing that most video games have in common is that they let us fail. If we won every single level when we played a game, like when I play Doodle Jump, if I were to beat every single level with ease, then it wouldn't be fun for me because I would never be failing. But for me, the glory lives not in never falling or failing, but in rising and winning and getting a higher score every time I fail. My second example is Jay-Z. Jay-Z came out of poverty. When all of his friends, when he was growing up, turned to drugs and turned to street violence, Jay-Z turned to rap, and Jay-Z let his words do what he wanted to express. Jay-Z wrote an album, and he even tried to go to several record labels in Los Angeles to promote this record album, but not a single person wanted to accept him. And so what did he do? He didn't just fall and stay down there. He rose, and he actually created his own record label. And that record label helped push him to where he is now. His net worth is $500 million, and he was one of Time's 2013 Persons of the Year. And not only that, he's married to Beyonce. So, like, he knows that the glory lives not in never falling, but in rising every time he falls. In summary today, I've given you 2 examples of how the glory lives not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. So whether you're battling supervillains, playing a video game, or rapping, know that the glory lives not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall.
Time 3:23.
The reason I had only 2 examples instead of 3 was because originally there was, I guess, some miscommunication in the class, and I thought the speech was limited to 3 minutes. The last speech I gave, I was actually struggling for time because it was limited, so this time I really tried to cut it to that 3 minutes, and so that's why I only have 2 examples instead of 3.
But you saw others giving 5 last week, so.
Yeah. That was my
It's a phony
fault for
excuse.
not changing it.
Okay. Leo. May I call you Leo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Nelson Mandela, his quote, and there are many of them by him, and especially in the realm of forgiveness, that he's pioneered, the reconciliation movement and so forth. But it was a really great quote, and I would have liked to have seen you do more of a dramatic job of presenting it, much the way you saw me read it and present it. Yeah. And secondly, we all pretty much know who Nelson Mandela is, but a little more expansion and telling us a little bit more about, he wasn't just jailed, he was jailed for half his life, in solitary confinement, was beaten, and, it wasn't pleasant. So, there's a better story you could have told. In any case, you didn't, and that was fine. You chose to go with a popular movie and make an allusion to Batman. I wasn't impressed with this allusion because this is a fictional character. And I suppose in the mores of movie going, he's somewhat courageous, but I don't know. Not so much for me, but anyway, you chose that, and you chose the difficulties that he's overcome. Now, it left me cold, but it probably turned on your audience here, because they all love Batman in this room, right?
Right.
You just love Batman. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, you re-quoted the quote you were supposed to be dealing with, and you said that even when things aren't going our way, it's imperative we persevere and give our best effort. Then you chose to do a video game named Doodle Jump. Right? Again, that's okay, and again, probably good for the students. Did you play Doodle Jump? You do, and you do too? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you play Doodle Jump, and you play Doodle Jump?
I play Logic games. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, okay. So that was probably okay, but I thought, someone of the magnitude of Nelson Mandela deserved better examples than Batman and Doodle Jump. That's just my aesthetics, in my opinion. I could be wrong. Jay-Z, okay, married to Beyonce, accumulated a lot of money. I don't really see I didn't really get the story of Jay-Z's life as overcoming anything that even slightly resembled what Nelson Mandela went through. Okay, he was rejected, yeah, and then he kept coming back and formed his own record company, but I just didn't get it. Okay. The obvious, you only had 2 examples. He's worth a lot of money, which impresses you. Summary, conclusion, and you tied back to the quote. So you answered the question somewhat, but I must tell you that I felt you could have done a better job with more examples and more appropriate examples to the gravity of who said the quote. Anyway.
Yeah, I was expecting to present in front of the class, so I was just really trying to choose like simple, tangible ideas, like examples for the class everything that the class was familiar with, like Batman and Jay-Z and Doodle Jump.
You did a good job with audience analysis, I'll grant you that. And no notes. Thank you. Okay. Okay, who would like to be? Do you have a speech?
No, I went last week.
Oh, you went
asked me a
last
question,
week.
though, later.
Oh, you have a question to ask me. Okay, who wants to be next? Do you want to be next? Or
Not in a rush, so.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not. That's fine. I'm good.
Okay, good. Yeah. Oh, whoa, whoa.